case of a man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador by the U.S. government. A judge now ordering that man be returned to the United States.
They've been wrong about everything. So have you, by the way.
Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CB.
Thank you, President. Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
It's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point.
Well, Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago, and they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over, and that's why nobody watches you anymore?
Oh my God, guys, this was freaking brutal. President Trump absolutely annihilated Kaitlan Collins again. This is like a daily humiliation, almost daily. You know, Kaitlan Collins, fake news, CNN's Kaitlan Collins, legacy news media, Kaitlan Collins, failing network, reducing the pay of Fake Tapper and Wolf Blitzer. That fake news CNN's Kaitlan Collins got destroyed. Again, Miss Nasty Person. You had nasty person.
Do you mind?
I would like for you to answer the question.
Okay, it's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple to, you're a nasty person, I'll tell you.
He keeps destroying her like on a regular basis before she even asked the question. Well, before he starts answering the question, he says, well, I'm going to take a question from this fake news anchor because she keeps like asking the same thing, talking over everybody else, trying to ask her a stupid question. Before it, he roasts her. During it, he roasts her. And at the end, he roasts her. The whole cabinet, you got Stephen Miller, Pam Bondi, Rubio, like they're all cooking this lady for asking this stupid question about this person who was deported accidentally, the MS-13 gang member, because there was a paperwork error. We said he was Trinde Aragua instead of MS-13. Bring him back to the country and keep him here. No, they literally asked the president, Nayib Bukele, hey, to his face, El Salvador president, hey, you going to bring him back? No. End of story. And Kaitlan Collins still tries to argue, well, the court said that, no. What are the courts going to do? Arrest the El Salvadorian president, you idiot? Without further ado, let's go ahead and react to this clown getting absolutely cooked. It's not worth the money. Let's get into it.
Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CB.
Thank you, President. Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country.
And they ordered that he be deported. Fun fact.
Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us.
And the president, just as a reminder, is sitting right there. Okay, the El Salvadorian, this is the El Salvadorian president. It says it on the screen. Okay, he's sitting right there, and we're going to get to that.
Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So yeah, basically, don't block the person from coming in. Like, but it's never going to happen. Let's keep going.
And you are doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen Miller, wait a minute. Can you just also respond to that question? Because, you know, it's asked by CNN, and they always ask it with a slant. Because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also, please?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point.
Facts.
As two immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13.
Two.
When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States.
Boom.
So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States.
Good.
And had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So, for clarity, because Miller talked pretty fast, I know most of you guys understood it, but I'm going to reiterate a little bit. This guy was deported because they already had a deportation order. What he didn't say is that they weren't supposed to deport him to El Salvador, and they weren't supposed to mark him as Trinidad Aragua. Because those two things happened, then the district court tried to say that Trump needed to effectuate bringing the person back, meaning they needed to do the work and force it to happen in 72 hours. Trump administration basically laughed and said that's impossible, it's never going to happen. The U.S. Supreme Court said, well, you guys did make a mistake, so you need to facilitate his return if El Salvador wants to return him. Not that they needed to return him. I called it from the beginning that the people who were reporting this, like CNN Fake News, was lying, saying that Supreme Court orders that Trump bring the illegal alien back. Never happened. The fake news has been doing this victory lap, trying to say that this person is coming back to America. It's never going to happen, guys, but let's go ahead and continue because there's more, definitely more here.
So you don't plan
But
to
the
ask for
Supreme
anyone
Court is
to get
asking
it back?
to.
Is that
What was the ruling
your
in
position?
the Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0
In our favor.
in our favor against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States.
Boom.
As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual at El Salvador's sole discretion was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Well,
No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it, per the court, can only be directed to him.
I asked
¿Usted lo
President
liberaría,
Bukele,
Presidente
what is your-
Bukele?
can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm suppose you're not suggesting that I smuggle terrorists into the United States, right?
It's always
how
CNN.
can I smuggle? How can I return him to the United States? Like I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
Even the president of El Salvador is roasting your stupid dumb ass, Kaitlan Collins. Look, you just can't respect these people. This is a stupid question. Are you going to bring him back? No, you little bitch.
So you can release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing. I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into our
I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick. These are sick people. Marco, do you have something to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, Stephen Island, I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin, except for Venezuela that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President, no, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
And that's what the Supreme Court held, by the way, to Marco's point. The Supreme Court said exactly what Marco said, that no court has the authority to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. We won a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they want foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children. But President Trump, his policy is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
Well, Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago, and they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You know, you have no credibility. Please go ahead.
President Trump.
God. Well, guys, there you have it. Kaitlan Collins is basically trying to argue with President Trump and El Salvadorian president Nayib Bukele here. She's trying to argue with him too. Like, well, the judge ordered it. Like, who the hell cares what the judge ordered? They said that, look, if they want to send him back, the correction would be for the United States to make sure that that can happen. Not for the United States to force it to happen. The district court tried to force Trump to make sure he was back in 72 hours. Impossible to do, even if the Trump administration did want to, which they don't. And the Supreme Court said that, well, sending him back would be the right thing to do and having him deported properly to a place that wasn't El Salvador. If it can be facilitated, then facilitated, but it does not necessarily have to occur. It's within reasonable means. So if El Salvador president said, then I guess it's just not going to effing happen. Kaitlan, what the hell do you want? What else should he do? Should we like go to war to bring back this illegal alien? Do we need to go and drop some bombs? Do we need to punch this dude in the face right here, right now? Just punch him in the face and be like, bring back MS-13. We don't care. This is an innocent man. It's a father. Okay, bring him back. Okay, bring him back so he can raise his kids up to be additional MS-13 members. You know, we want to smuggle more girls and more fentanyl and more crime in America. That's what CNN fake news is advocating for. These people are so stupid. I don't even know what the hell Kaitlan Collins was getting at here. Like, it's her job just to be adversarial towards Donald Trump. Like, how much are they paying you? It's so crazy because she didn't used to be like this. I don't know who this person is. I don't know if all of these people are just actors, partisan hacks. I don't know if they change once they get into some of these fake news organizations. It's like a toxic culture or something where they just hate on everything conservative, or they just hate on Trump, or they're like, look, I'm getting paid a lot of money. I better do what the hell they ask. I don't know, but it's freaking sick. And I'm glad this lady's getting humiliated. It's got to be eating away at her. Like, man, every time I open my mouth, I get cooked by President Trump. And that's what's going to keep happening. So I hope it's worth the money, because it's going to be a rough 4 years for you getting your ass cooked and bullied by Donald Trump at every single press event because you keep asking these stupid behind questions. Anyway, guys, what do you guys think? You think that we should bring back terrorists? Let me know what you guys think. Drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. I appreciate you watching the Black Anomaly Rising channel. I'm out.
Question?
On terrorist
No, not you. Not